2 pink lines, an impossible pregnancy, and for a church girl. But the man responsible, Seoul's most dangerous mafia boss, he was only with her because of a bet, a twisted game to claim the untouchable church virgin as a trophy. What neither of them expected was the moment her love would turn to hatred, and the man who vowed to corrupt her would become addicted to the one woman he was never meant to love. Quick question. Ever had someone bet against you? My ex said I'd never reach 1,000 subscribers, called it a pipe dream. But if this hook grabbed you, if you want to see how this forbidden romance explodes, subscribe. Help me prove him wrong. Let's do this. Naomi Adeyemi had learned to live with empty spaces. At 24, the endometriosis had already stolen her fertility, leaving scar tissue where dreams of motherhood once lived. She'd made peace with it in prayer, deciding that Seoul's orphaned children would be enough, more than enough. Blessed Mercy Church in Guro district became her purpose, serving immigrants who existed in the cracks of South Korea's gleaming facade. The collision happened at a charity medical outreach in Gangnam. Naomi was carrying a box of supplies when someone slammed into her. The box went flying. Strong hands caught her waist, steadying her against a solid chest. "Forgive me." She looked up into the most beautiful face she'd ever seen. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail of her expression. Black hair swept back from his forehead. His charcoal suit probably cost more than her yearly stipend. "I'm fine," Naomi managed, stepping back quickly. Her skin burned where he'd touched her. Kang Ji-hwan watched her bend to collect scattered bandages, something dangerous unfurling in his chest. He controlled 60% of Seoul's underground empire, had ordered executions over dinner, owned politicians like other men owned stocks. Nothing surprised him anymore, until this woman, with warm brown skin and genuine laughter, looked at him without recognition, without fear, like he was just a man who'd bumped into her. He wanted to corrupt that innocence, possess it, own it completely. Find out everything about her, he told his security before his Mercedes even left the curb. By midnight, Ji-hwan knew everything. Naomi Adeyemi volunteered at Blessed Mercy Church 6 days a week, led a women's prayer group on Thursdays, lived in a cramped rooftop apartment with 3 elderly Korean missionary women who treated her like a granddaughter. She sent half her stipend back to her father in Texas. She'd never had a boyfriend. She read her Bible every morning at a cafe 2 blocks from the church. She was devastatingly, impossibly innocent. Ji-hwan was still studying her file when Min-jun strolled into his office at the family compound, smirking like he'd already won something. His younger half-brother dropped into the leather chair across from Ji-hwan's desk without invitation. "The church, girl," Min-jun said, pulling up a photo on his phone. Naomi laughing with children outside the church. "You've been obsessing for 3 days. It's pathetic." Ji-hwan's jaw tightened. "Get out. Or we could make this interesting." Min-jun leaned forward, eyes glittering with malice. "A wager. Seduce her within 30 days. Make her actually fall in love with you. If you succeed, I withdraw my petition to father about the pharmaceutical operation. You get full control of 45 billion won in product. And if I refuse, then I'll pursue her myself." Min-jun's smile turned cruel. "Wonder how long that innocence lasts when she's crying in my bed." Ji-hwan's hand crushed the glass he was holding. Whiskey and blood dripped onto his desk. Min-jun's threat had crystallized something dark and possessive in his chest. This wasn't about a bet anymore. This was about making sure no one else ever touched her. 30 days, Ji-hwan agreed quietly. "But when I win, you leave Seoul. Permanently." The orchestration began immediately. An anonymous donation appeared in the church's account, enough to fund their orphanage expansion. Ji-hwan's legitimate tech company suddenly needed a Korean English translator for international clients. Pastor Kim mentioned it to Naomi, calling it a blessing from God. She showed up for the interview, wearing a modest blue dress, her resume clutched in nervous hands. Ji-hwan pretended to review her qualifications while memorizing the way sunlight caught in her dark hair. "The position is yours if you want it," he said. 20 hours a week, flexible schedule around your church work. This seems too good to be true. Naomi bit her lower lip, and Ji-hwan imagined biting it himself. "Why me?" "Your references are excellent, and honestly." He let sincerity bleed into his voice. "I admire what you're doing at the church. This city needs more people like you." She blushed, dropping her gaze. "I'm just trying to serve where I'm needed." So humble, so genuine, Ji-hwan wanted to wreck her. The chance meetings multiplied. He appeared at her morning cafe, claiming he lived nearby. When 3 men cornered her outside the subway, calling her ugly names in Korean she barely understood, Ji-hwan materialized from nowhere, his presence enough to send them running. He didn't mention he'd paid them to harass her. "Thank you," Naomi breathed, adrenaline making her voice shake. "You keep saving me." "Maybe I'm supposed to." Ji-hwan steadied her with a hand on her shoulder, letting his thumb brush her collarbone. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but didn't step away from his touch. Ji-hwan catalogued that detail with savage satisfaction. She was already responding to him, her body betraying what her mind refused to acknowledge. Naomi lay awake that night in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd prayed for an hour, begging God to remove this inappropriate attraction to Kang Ji-hwan. But her skin still tingled where he'd touched her. Her heart still raced when she remembered the protective fury in his eyes. This was wrong. He was just her employer, just a kind man who happened to appear when she needed help. Nothing more. So why did every fibre of her being want to see him again? Over coffee, Naomi told him about growing up in Houston, feeling caught between her Nigerian heritage and American identity, about her mother's death when she was 17, how cancer had eaten through their family like acid.
"The infertility diagnosis came 2 years later," she said quietly, stirring sugar into her cup. "Endometriosis, stage 4. The doctors said I'd never carry a child." Ji-hwan reached across the table, covering her hand with his.
"I'm sorry. I've made peace with it. God has other plans for me." But her voice wavered, and Ji-hwan filed away that weakness, that hidden grief she carried. He offered his own carefully constructed truths in return. His mother's death in a car accident when he was 12, his father's emotional abandonment, building a corporate empire while his son grew up with nannies and bodyguards. "I have everything," Ji-hwan said, staring out at the rain streaking down the cafe window. "And I've never felt more alone." Naomi's fingers tightened around his. "You're not alone." The first kiss happened in the church library during a thunderstorm. Naomi was shelving donated books when Ji-hwan appeared, soaked from the rain. He'd brought dinner, claiming he was worried she'd forget to eat while organising the new children's section. "You didn't have to do this," she said, but accepted the warm container of food. "I wanted to." He stood too close, water dripping from his hair onto his shoulders. "I always want to, when it comes to you." The confession hung between them, heavy as the humid air. Naomi's pulse hammered in her throat. She should step back, should remind him this was inappropriate, that she'd committed her life to God, that she couldn't feel this burning pull toward a man she barely knew. Instead, she reached up and touched his wet cheek. Ji-hwan moved like lightning, backing her against the bookshelf, his mouth claiming hers with barely restrained hunger. Naomi gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, kissing her deeper, one hand sliding into her hair, while the other gripped her waist. She kissed him back desperately, 5 years of denied desire pouring out in that moment. His tongue swept against hers, and heat exploded low in her belly, unfamiliar and terrifying and intoxicating. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, shame crashed over Naomi like cold water. "I can't," she whispered, pressing shaking fingers to her swollen lips. This is wrong. I need to pray. I need to think. She confessed to Pastor Kim the next morning, words tumbling out between sobs. The elderly pastor listened quietly, his weathered face troubled. This man, Ji Huan, he said carefully. There is darkness around him. I feel it in my spirit. Be very careful, daughter. The devil often comes dressed as everything we desire. But when Ji Huan texted asking to see her, Naomi's traitorous fingers typed yes before her mind could intervene. His penthouse was sleek glass and steel, overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Naomi stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, trying to reconcile this wealth with the man who'd listened to her stories in cheap cafes. You're scared, Ji Huan said behind her, close enough that she felt his breath on her neck. Yes. Honesty seemed like the only option left. Of you. Of this. Of how much I want something I shouldn't. He turned her to face him, dark eyes searching hers. What if you stopped fighting it? What if you just let yourself feel? His kiss was different this time, slower, deliberate, coaxing rather than demanding. Naomi melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he walked her backward towards the bedroom. Every touch ignited nerve endings she didn't know existed. Every whispered word against her skin dissolved another layer of resistance. When he finally claimed her completely on day 29, Naomi cried out his name like a prayer and a confession both. But something fractured in Ji Huan as he held her trembling body afterward, her tears dampening his chest. This wasn't supposed to feel like this. He wasn't supposed to need her breathing like he needed oxygen, wasn't supposed to feel violent possessiveness at the thought of her leaving this bed, this room, his life. The bet didn't matter anymore. Min Jun didn't matter. Nothing mattered except keeping her here, making her his in every possible way, owning not just her body, but her soul forever. He'd meant to corrupt her innocence. Instead, she'd infected him with something far more dangerous. Naomi had never experienced nausea like this. For 3 mornings straight, she'd barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach emptied itself. The exhaustion was different too, bone deep, pulling her toward sleep at odd hours. When her period didn't come, she told herself it was stress. The endometriosis had always made her cycles irregular anyway, but some quiet voice in her spirit whispered otherwise. She bought the pregnancy test at a convenience store 3 districts away from Guro, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses like a criminal. Her hands shook so badly she could barely open the package in the church bathroom. 2 minutes felt like 2 hours as she paced the tiny space, praying incoherently. 2 pink lines, positive. Naomi sank onto the closed toilet lid, the test clutched in her trembling fingers. Impossible. Every doctor since she was 19 had told her the same thing. Severe endometriosis, extensive scarring, less than 1% chance of natural conception. She'd grieved her infertility, made peace with it, built a life around that absence, and now this. A miracle, a baby, joy and terror warred in her chest. She was unmarried, sleeping with a man she'd known, barely a month, living on a missionary stipend in a foreign country. Everything about this was wrong by every standard she'd been raised with, but a baby, a child she'd never thought she'd carry. Divine intervention felt like the only explanation. She had to tell Ji Huan tonight. Surely he'd be happy, despite everything happening so fast. He'd told her he loved her just yesterday, his face buried in her hair as they lay tangled in his sheets. She had to believe that was real. Had to believe this terrifying, overwhelming thing between them was real. Naomi tucked the pregnancy test into her purse and headed toward Gangnam. Across the city, Ji Huan sat across from Min Jun in their father's study, signing documents with savage satisfaction. His brother's face was purple with rage. You're forfeiting! Min Jun slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. 45 billion won in operational control, and you're just handing it to me? Yes. Ji-hwan signed the last page, his handwriting sharp and decisive. The bet is void. You win by default. Because of her, Min-jun's laugh was ugly. You're choosing a broke church girl over the largest pharmaceutical smuggling operation in Southeast Asia. I'm choosing the woman I'm going to marry. Ji-hwan stood, straightening his cuffs. Naomi is not part of any game. She never was, not really. You're pathetic. Father will never approve this marriage. Father doesn't control who I marry. But even as Ji-hwan said it, doubt flickered. Kang Do-hyun had built an empire on control, letting his heir marry a foreign missionary with no connections, no wealth, no political value would be seen as weakness. They'd deal with that problem when it came. Right now, Ji-hwan just needed to get home to Naomi, tell her everything, confess the bet's origin before explaining how completely it had stopped mattering. He should have moved faster. Naomi arrived at the penthouse, using the key Ji-hwan had given her 3 days ago. He wasn't home yet. She wandered through the sleek space, her hand unconsciously drifting to her still flat stomach. Would they raise a baby here, surrounded by glass and steel? Or would Ji-hwan want somewhere different, somewhere with a yard, somewhere children could play? She was smiling at the thought when she noticed the document on his study desk. The folder was labelled with Korean characters she couldn't read, but her name was visible on the tab. Naomi told herself not to look, that it was probably just translation work for the company, but something cold slithered down her spine. She opened it. The first page was a contract. Her limited Korean wasn't enough to understand all the legal terminology, but certain words jumped out. Wager, 30 days. Pharmaceutical operation, 45 billion won. Her hands started shaking as she flipped through pages. Detailed surveillance reports of her daily routine, photographs of her at the church, at the cafe, walking to the bus stop, psychological profile, noting her religious devotion, her infertility trauma, her vulnerability to rescue scenarios, strategic timeline, week 1, establish trust through orchestrated encounters, week 2, create emotional dependency through shared vulnerabilities. Week 3, physical escalation. Week 4, full seduction. Every date was listed, every conversation topic, every touch had been calculated, planned, strategized like a military operation. The pregnancy test was still hidden in her pocket when she heard Ji-won's key in the lock. He found her standing in his study, the contract pages scattered across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. The colour drained from his face. Naomi. His voice was careful, controlled. Let me explain. Explain what? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant and cold. That I was a bet, that you studied me like I was some kind of target. She picked up one of the surveillance photos. You had people following me, documenting where I went, who I talked to, what time I went to sleep. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Ji-hwan? She threw the photo at him. It fluttered to the floor between them. Tell me which part I'm misunderstanding. The part where your brother bet you couldn't seduce the church girl, or the part where you accepted and spent a month manipulating me into your bed. I forfeited the bet. He moved toward her but stopped when she flinched back. Today, I signed everything over to Min-jun because none of it matters compared to you. You forfeited today? Naomi laughed and it sounded broken. After you'd already won. After you'd already gotten me to sleep with you, to fall in love with you, to give you everything I'd saved my whole life. Tears were streaming down her face now. Was any of it real? Even one moment? All of it was real. His voice cracked. It started as a game, yes. I'm not denying that. But it stopped being a game the first time you smiled at me. Every moment after that was real, Naomi. I love you. I was coming home tonight to ask you to marry me. She wanted to believe him so desperately it physically hurt. But the documents were still scattered across his desk, evidence of his deception printed in black and white. The man she'd given her virginity to, The man whose child she was carrying had orchestrated their entire relationship like a corporate acquisition. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? Naomi pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back sobs. You're a liar. Everything about you is a lie. Not how I feel about you. That was never a lie. Get away from me. She grabbed her purse, the pregnancy test a secret weight against her hip. Don't call me. Don't come to the church. Don't ever speak to me again. Naomi, please. He caught her wrist as she tried to pass him. Just listen to me for 5 minutes. Let me explain everything. She jerked free, her protective instinct for the baby she carried, giving her strength. There's nothing left to explain. You're exactly what Pastor Kim warned me about. Darkness dressed as everything I desired. She left him standing in his study, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, and didn't look back even when she heard him call her name. The elevator doors closed on his devastated expression, and Naomi finally let herself collapse against the wall, one hand pressed to her stomach where Ji-hwan's child was growing. She'd come here to share a miracle. Instead, she'd discovered a nightmare. She'd made it to the lobby when a woman's voice stopped her. You must be Naomi. The woman was breathtaking in a way that made Naomi feel small and plain. Perfect porcelain skin, designer clothes that probably cost more than the church's monthly budget. Cold intelligence in her dark eyes. She smiled, but it didn't reach those eyes. I'm Han Yu-jin, Ji-hwan's fiancé. The word punched the air from Naomi's lungs. His what? Did he not mention me? Eugene smile sharpened. How careless of him. We've been engaged since we were children. Family arrangement, you understand. The Kang syndicate needs the Han family's political connections. I don't believe you. Of course you don't. You're in love with him. Eugene pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. Here we are at our engagement party last year, and here at his father's birthday celebration 3 months ago. We're supposed to marry next spring. The photos were undeniable. Ji-hwan with his arm around this beautiful woman, smiling at formal events, looking every inch the powerful heir to a criminal empire. You're number 12, by the way, Eugene continued conversationally. He has a fetish for innocent foreign girls. Before you, there was a Brazilian dancer named Gabriela. Before her, a Swedish graduate student named Ingrid. Should I continue? Naomi's vision was blurring. Stop. They all thought they were special too. They all thought his feelings were real. Eugene swiped through more photos. Different women, different locations, but always the same penthouse visible in the background. The pattern is always the same. 3 to 6 months of intensity, then he pays them off and moves on to the next conquest. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. Ji-hwan doesn't love you. He's incapable of love. He collects broken things, plays with them until he gets bored, then discards them. Eugene's expression turned almost pitying. Go home, sweetheart, before you get hurt worse than you already are. Naomi ran, out of the building, into the Seoul night, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out, collapsing on a bench in some nameless park. The pregnancy test was still in her purse. Her phone was buzzing with calls from Ji-hwan that she didn't answer, and somewhere in this glittering, merciless city, she was carrying the child of a man who'd played her like a game. A miracle baby conceived through deception. What kind of cruel joke was God playing? The summons came 2 days later. A black car, 2 men in suits, a polite but non-negotiable invitation to meet Kang Do-hyun. The patriarch's office was all dark wood and leather, power radiating from every surface. Do-hyun himself was silver-haired and terrifying in his calm, studying Naomi like an insect under glass. Miss Adeyemi. He slid a folder across his desk. 11 women before you. Brazilian, Swedish, French, American. All paid between $100,000 and $500,000 to sign non-disclosure agreements and disappear. Naomi's hands trembled as she flipped through documentation, contracts, bank transfers, photographs of women who looked hauntingly similar, young, foreign, innocent-looking. "I'm offering you $500,000. Do-hyun continued. "Leave Korea immediately. Never contact my son again." "No." The word came out stronger than she felt. His expression hardened. "Then I'll have you deported on fabricated visa violations. Your church will be investigated for money laundering. Your elderly missionary friends will face charges. Every person you care about will suffer." Naomi stood on shaking legs. "Do what you have to do." She made it outside before the reporters swarmed. Cameras flashing, voices shouting in Korean and English. Someone had leaked surveillance footage. Her and Ji-hwan kissing, entering his penthouse, intimate moments stolen and broadcast. "Miss Adeyemi, are you pregnant with Kang Ji-hwan's child?" The question came from everywhere at once. Naomi froze, cornered, cameras recording her tear-streaked face. "Yes." The admission tore from her throat. "Yes, I'm pregnant." The feeding frenzy intensified. By evening, her face was on every news channel in South Korea. Foreign missionary, Mafia heir, scandal, pregnancy. Her phone exploded with calls she couldn't answer. Ji-hwan, Pastor Kim, unknown numbers. The world had become a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Ji-hwan learned about the pregnancy from a news alert on his phone. The headline blazed across the screen in Korean and English. "Kang heir's secret lover. Pregnant. Scandal rocks criminal empire." Below it, a photograph of Naomi outside his father's office, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by reporters. He replayed the video 3 times, watching her confirm it. Yes, I'm pregnant." Something primal and overwhelming crashed through him, his child, growing inside the woman he loved, a miracle baby that doctors said could never exist, created from their desperate passion. Then rage followed, white-hot and murderous. His father had done this, summoned her, threatened her, forced her into a corner where the only escape was confession to a media mob. Ji-hwan was in his car before his security team could react, driving towards the family compound with his foot pressed to the floor. He found Do-hyun in his study, calmly reviewing documents as if he hadn't just destroyed an innocent woman's life. "She's carrying your grandchild!" Ji-hwan slammed both hands on the desk. "My child!" Do-hyun didn't even look up. "Then you'll raise it with Yoo-jin after a quiet termination and suitable marriage. The church girl is beneath our bloodline." "A termination?" Ji-hwan's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You want her to abort my baby. I want you to stop being weak." Do-hyun finally met his son's eyes, and there was nothing but cold calculation there. This foreign missionary with no family, no connections, no value to our empire. She's a liability. The pregnancy is a complication. Both can be resolved quietly. I won't let you touch her. You don't have a choice. Do-hyun pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "I've already filed immigration violations. Her visa was obtained through falsified employment documents at your company. She'll be detained within 48 hours and deported. If she resists, there will be additional charges." Ji-hwan's hands curled into fists. "You won't win this. I already have." Do-hyun's smile was serpentine. "Unless you'd prefer I arrange something more permanent. Deportations can be dangerous. Planes crash. People disappear." The threat hung in the air between them. Ji-hwan realized with crystalline clarity that his father would absolutely murder Naomi if it became necessary. She wasn't human to him. She was a problem requiring elimination. "I'm done," Ji-hwan said quietly. "Done with this family. Done with your empire. Done being your weapon." He left before Do-hyun could respond, already calling his most trusted security team, the ones who were loyal to him personally, not to the Kang family name. Naomi was at the church, hiding in the small office while reporters camped outside. Pastor Kim had locked the doors, called the police, but the media circus wasn't leaving. She sat curled in a chair, one hand pressed to her stomach where the baby was growing, the other clutching her phone. 17 missed calls from Ji Hwan, 53 text messages she hadn't read. When he appeared in the doorway, she didn't know whether to run towards him or away. He looked haggard, desperate, nothing like the controlled man who'd seduced her with calculated precision. "I know you hate me," Ji Hwan said, staying by the door like he was afraid to come closer. "I know I destroyed your trust, but that baby is mine, you are mine, and I will burn down my entire family empire before I let anyone hurt you. Your father wants to deport me." Naomi's voice was hollow. Ji Hwan's jaw clenched. "I won't let that happen. How can you stop him? He owns half of Seoul. He owns politicians and judges and police officers." She finally looked at him, and the devastation in her eyes made something crack in Ji Hwan's chest. "I'm carrying a miracle baby conceived through lies, and your father wants to eliminate us both like we're business problems." "Then we run." Ji Hwan moved into the room, kneeling in front of her chair. "My mother had a cabin on Jeju Island. My father doesn't know about it. We can go there, hide until I figure out how to neutralize him. Running doesn't solve anything. It keeps you alive. It keeps our baby safe." His hands hovered near her stomach, not quite touching. "Please, Naomi, I'm begging you, let me protect you." She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she'd never trust him again, that they were finished, but the baby fluttered in her womb, a tiny reminder of the impossible life growing inside her, and maternal instinct overrode everything else. "If you betray me again," Naomi whispered, "I will disappear with this child and you will never find us." "I won't. I swear it." They left through the church's back entrance an hour later, Ji Hwan's security creating a diversion at the front. The drive to Gimpo Airport felt like a chase scene, Naomi's heart hammering every time she saw a black car that might belong to the Kang family. The cabin on Jeju Island was small, rustic, nothing like Ji Hwan's glass and steel penthouse. It sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, surrounded by wild grass and ancient stone walls. His mother had bought it secretly years ago, a refuge from the violence of her marriage. "She killed herself when I was 12. Ji Hwan said, that first night, standing at the window watching waves crash against rocks below, pills and alcohol, left a note saying she couldn't live in darkness anymore. Naomi stood in the doorway, unsure whether to comfort him or maintain distance. "I'm sorry. My father told me she was weak. That strength means enduring anything, sacrificing anything, feeling nothing." He turned to face her, and his expression was raw. "He raised me to be a weapon, taught me to manipulate, to control, to take what I wanted without remorse, and I became exactly what he wanted until you." "Until the bet," Naomi corrected bitterly. "The bet was how it started. But you broke something in me, Naomi. Made me feel things I didn't think I was capable of feeling." He took a step toward her. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that every word I've said to you since I forfeited that bet has been true." She wanted to believe him. God help her. She wanted it so desperately. "How do I trust you after everything?" "You don't. Not yet." Ji Hwan kept his distance, respecting the space she needed, "But I'll spend the rest of my life earning it back." Days blurred together on Jeju. Ji Hwan cooked for her, clumsy and inexperienced in the kitchen, but trying. She caught him reading pregnancy books on his phone, making notes about what she should eat, what vitamins she needed. He talked to her stomach at night when he thought she was sleeping, whispering promises in Korean to the baby. "I was told at 19 I'd never have this," Naomi said one evening, sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Her hand rested on her growing belly. "I grieved for years, made peace with being alone." Ji Hwan sat beside her, careful not to touch unless invited. And now? Now I'm 6 months pregnant with a baby that shouldn't exist, hiding from a Mafia patriarch who wants us dead, in love with a man I'm terrified to trust. She laughed without humour. God has a twisted sense of humour. I'll protect you both. His voice was absolute. Whatever it takes. That night, she let him hold her for the first time since discovering the bet. His arms came around her carefully, like she was something precious and fragile. She felt his lips press against her hair, felt the tension in his body as he fought to keep his touch gentle. "Make love to me," Naomi whispered. "Are you sure?" "No, but do it anyway." This time was different from all the others. Desperate, yes, but also claiming. Ji-hwan touched her like he was memorizing every curve, every response, every sound she made. He whispered Korean endearments she didn't understand, but felt in her bones. When he moved inside her, his hand splayed protectively over her rounded stomach, and Naomi realized she wasn't just making love to him, she was choosing him. Despite everything, despite the lies and manipulation and danger, she was choosing this dark, obsessive, damaged man as the father of her miracle baby. The raid came at dawn 3 weeks later. Naomi woke to shouting, helicopter blades cutting through morning air, boots pounding on the porch. Ji-hwan was already pulling her out of bed, pressing a phone into her hands. The passage behind the bookshelf. "It leads to a cave system my mother built. Follow it to the beach. There's a boat programmed to take you to Busan." He was shoving clothes into a bag, moving with military efficiency. "Don't stop. Don't look back. What about you? I'm buying you time." He kissed her hard, one hand cradling her face. "I love you. Remember that." Then he was gone, and Naomi heard violence erupt in the cabin's main room. Furniture breaking, men shouting, Ji-hwan's voice roaring something in Korean that made her blood run cold. She ran through the hidden passage, through damp darkness, 6 months pregnant and stumbling over rocks. Behind her, she heard a single gunshot, and her heart stopped. But she kept running, because their baby needed her alive. The boat was waiting exactly where Ji-hwan said it would be. As it pulled away from Jeju's shore, Naomi watched police vehicles surrounding the cabin, lights flashing red and blue against the dawn sky. She didn't know if Ji-hwan was dead or arrested, didn't know if she'd ever see him again. All she knew was that she was alone, pregnant, and hunted by one of South Korea's most powerful criminal empires. The message from Do-hyun came 2 days later. Naomi was hiding in a cheap Busan motel, using cash Ji-hwan had given her, trying to figure out her next move. "Meet me at Busan Tower. Come alone. I'll drop all charges if you hear my final offer." She stared at the text for a long time. Then she called Ji-hwan's attorney, the one he'd told her was loyal to him personally. "If I don't contact you within 2 hours of meeting Kang Do-hyun," Naomi said, "release everything to the press, every detail about him persecuting his pregnant daughter-in-law, fabricating charges, threatening deportation, destroy his reputation. Are you sure about this, Miss Adeyemi?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Busan Tower's observation deck was empty except for Do-hyun and 2 bodyguards. The old man stood at the window overlooking the city, hands clasped behind his back. "You're braver than I expected," he said without turning, "or more foolish." "Where's Ji-hwan?" Naomi stayed near the elevator, one hand protectively over her stomach. "In custody, assaulting police officers, resisting arrest. He'll be charged unless you and I reach an agreement." Do-hyun finally faced her. $5 million, American citizenship for you and the child. You disappear, sign documents relinquishing all parental rights. No, 20 million, plus a house in California. Protected identity. You'll never have to work again. No. Do-hyun's expression hardened. $50 million, complete protection for your child, the best schools, the best opportunities. All you have to do is walk away and let Ji-hwan marry appropriately. Naomi stepped closer, fear and fury warring in her chest. Your son loves me. Your grandchild is in my womb. What price can you put on your family's soul, Mr. Kang? My family's soul, Do-hyun laughed, cold and empty. My family has no soul, Miss Adeyemi. We're monsters who own this city, and you're a naive missionary who thinks love conquers all. Then I guess we'll find out. Naomi pulled out her phone, showing him the attorney's number. Because if anything happens to me, every news outlet in South Korea gets documentation of everything you've done. Your persecution, your threats, your fabricated charges. Let's see how Seoul's elite feels about a mafia boss terrorizing a pregnant woman. For the first time, calculation flickered across Do-hyun's face. He'd underestimated her, seen her innocence as weakness when it was actually armor. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Naomi backed toward the elevator, but before she could press the button, the doors slid open. Min-jun stepped out, and something was wrong with his eyes. Too bright, pupils dilated, movements jerky and aggressive. He was high on something, cocaine probably, and he held a gun loosely in his right hand. Well, isn't this touching? Min-jun said, his words slightly slurred. The church girl threatening the great Kang Do-hyun. You've got spine, I'll give you that. Min-jun! Do-hyun's voice carried warning. Put that away. Why? So you can keep negotiating with this disease that's infecting our family? Min-jun's laugh was unhinged, manic. He gestured with the gun toward Naomi's pregnant belly. She's carrying a bastard that will destroy everything we've built. The media is already tearing us apart. Business partners are questioning our strength, all because my brother couldn't keep his obsession under control. Naomi's hand moved protectively to her stomach. Her heart was hammering so hard she felt lightheaded. I'm leaving, right now. No, you're not. Min-jun moved between her and the elevator, the gun now pointed directly at her. You're the problem. You and that thing growing inside you. Cut out the disease, and the family heals. Stand down, Min-jun. Do-hyun's voice was sharp now, commanding. This isn't how we handle things. Isn't it? Min-jun turned his wild eyes to his father. You've had people killed for less. You've eliminated threats to the family for decades. Why is she different? Because she's pregnant? Because Ji-hwan thinks he loves her? He turned back to Naomi, raising the gun to aim at her belly with terrifying precision. One bullet ends this whole mess. The scandal dies. Ji-hwan marries Yoo-jin like he's supposed to, and I prove I'm strong enough to make the hard choices. Naomi couldn't breathe. She was going to die here, on this observation deck, and her miracle baby would die with her, all because she'd fallen in love with the wrong man, trusted the wrong touch, believed in something that was built on lies from the beginning. Please, she whispered. Please don't. Min-jun! Do-hyun moved forward but stopped when his son swung the gun toward him. Stay back. I'm finishing what you were too weak to do. Min-jun's finger moved to the trigger. Say goodbye to your bastard church girl. The elevator doors burst open again, and Ji-hwan exploded into the space like violence given human form. His face was bruised, blood on his shirt from where he'd fought through custody. He took in the scene in a split second. His brother with a gun, Naomi frozen in terror, their father watching. Ji-hwan moved without hesitation, placing himself between the gun and Naomi's pregnant body. You want to kill my family? Ji-hwan's voice was deadly calm. You go through me first, brother. Move, Ji-hwan. Min-jun's hand was shaking now, the gun wavering. This isn't about you. It's exactly about me. Ji-hwan spread his arms, making himself a bigger target. You're high, you're desperate, and you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. But if you're going to pull that trigger, you shoot me. Not her, not my child. Your child. Min-jun laughed, the sound breaking. This was supposed to be a game, a bet. You weren't supposed to actually fall in love with her. You weren't supposed to choose her over everything we are. I already chose her. Ji-hwan took a step closer to his brother, closing the distance despite the gun. The moment I forfeited that bet, the moment I realized she was worth more than this empire, this family, this blood-soaked legacy. We've been drowning in our whole lives. You're weak, just like Mother was weak. Enough, Do-hyun said loudly. He walked to the observation deck window, staring out at Busan's glittering harbour. When he spoke again, his voice carried the exhaustion of decades. Your mother stood in this exact spot 30 years ago. Do-hyun didn't turn around. She begged me to leave the criminal life, said our sons deserved better than growing up in darkness. I told her the empire was more important than sentiment. That power was the only thing that mattered. His reflection in the glass looked haunted. 6 months later, she swallowed enough pills to stop her heart. Left a note saying she couldn't watch me destroy our children the way I'd destroyed her hope. Min-jun lowered his gun. Ji-hwan's arm had come around Naomi's shoulders. Pulling her against his side, she leaned into him, her whole body still trembling from how close she'd come to death. I raised you both to be weapons, Do-hyun continued, taught you that love was weakness, that emotion was a liability, that only power and control mattered, and now I'm watching history repeat itself. My sons on the brink of murdering each other, a pregnant woman caught in the crossfire, all because I couldn't see past my own obsession with building an empire. He finally turned to face them. For the first time, Naomi saw something human in his eyes, regret, grief, the faint ghost of the man he might have been before darkness consumed him. All charges against you are dropped, Miss Adeyemi. Do-hyun's voice was formal, controlled. Immediately, I'll handle the immigration violations personally. The surveillance, the fabricated evidence, all of it disappears. Father, Min-jun started, but Do-hyun held up a hand. The engagement to Han Yu-jin is cancelled. I'll compensate her family financially for the broken arrangement. He looked at Ji-hwan now, something painful flickering across his expression. But you're cut off from inheritance. You are no longer heir to the Kang Syndicate. You get nothing. No money, no power, no empire. Ji-hwan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I understand. Do you? Do-hyun moved closer. You'll have to build a life from nothing. No family support, no connections, no safety net. If you choose her, choose this child. You have only each other. Can you survive that? Can you be the man she needs without the empire backing you? Yes. Ji-hwan didn't hesitate. His arm tightened around Naomi. I can. I will. Do-hyun studied his son for a long moment, then turned to Naomi. My wife would be ashamed of the father I've been. Perhaps I can be a better grandfather than I was a parent. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. But you'll build your life without my empire, without my blood money. If this woman and this child are what you choose, then you have nothing but each other. That's more than enough, Ji-hwan said. Do-hyun nodded slowly, then walked to the elevator. Min-jun followed, his movements mechanical, defeated. Before the doors closed, the old patriarch looked back one last time. Be better than I was, Ji-hwan. Break the cycle. Then they were gone, and Naomi and Ji-hwan were alone on the observation deck as the sun set over Busan Harbour. She turned in his arms, looking up at the face of the man who'd just given up everything for her. No empire, she whispered. No inheritance, nothing but us and this baby. Nothing but us, Ji-hwan agreed, and kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. That's all I need. 6 months had rewritten everything. The modest apartment in Mapo district was nothing like Ji-hwan's penthouse. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely big enough for both of them to stand in, neighbours whose arguments they could hear through thin walls. But it was theirs, paid for with money Ji-hwan earned through legitimate security consulting, his criminal skills, divorced from the empire that had shaped them, turned out to be valuable in the corporate world. Naomi taught English at an international school, her pregnancy visible beneath loose dresses until maternity leave arrived. She still volunteered at Blessed Mercy Church every Saturday, and Pastor Kim had stopped looking at Ji-hwan like he expected the devil to emerge at any moment. They'd married in a small church ceremony. Naomi's father and aunts attended via video call from Texas. Wary but trying, her father had asked Ji-hwan one question during their virtual meeting. Will you protect my daughter and grandchild with everything you have? Ji-hwan's answer had been simple. With my life. Every day. Without question. Baby Daniel Adeyemi Kang was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. 8 pounds, healthy lungs, his mother's warm brown skin, and his father's intense dark eyes. Ji-hwan had held his son for the first time, with hands that trembled. This man who'd orchestrated violence without flinching, undone completely by 7 pounds of miracle. He's perfect, Ji-hwan whispered, tears tracking down his face. You're perfect, both of you. Naomi watched her husband become a father and saw the obsession redirect itself. Ji-hwan checked on Daniel compulsively, researching every milestone, every developmental stage, hovering over the crib at night to make sure their son was breathing. When other men looked at Naomi too long at the grocery store, his jaw would tighten, his hand would find the small of her back, possessive and claiming. You're doing it again, Naomi said one evening, catching him watching her feed Daniel with that intense focus that used to terrify her. Doing what? Looking at me like I might disappear if you blink. Ji-hwan moved behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. Because you almost did disappear. Because my brother held a gun to your stomach. Because I wake up some nights convinced this is all a dream, and I'm still in that empty penthouse, alone, poisoned by my father's empire. She reached up, covering his hand with hers. But I'm here. We're here. Daniel is asleep in his crib, and we're having leftover kimchi fried rice for dinner, and this is real. I know. His voice dropped lower. But knowing doesn't stop the need to possess you, to claim you, to make sure every part of you knows you're mine. Naomi stood, Daniel secure in her arms, and turned to face her husband. The darkness was still there in his eyes, would probably always be there, the obsessive need to control, to protect, to own. But it had transformed into something else, devotion, fierce, consuming, occasionally overwhelming devotion. Then claim me, she whispered. After Daniel's asleep, show me I'm yours. Later, in their small bedroom with the baby monitor glowing on the nightstand, Ji-hwan made love to his wife with the same desperate intensity as always. His hands mapped her post-pregnancy body with reverence, his mouth claiming hers like he was drowning and she was air. You're mine forever now, he whispered against her throat, his body moving inside hers with possessive rhythm. Both of you, my family, mine to protect, mine to love, mine. Forever and always, Naomi gasped, her nails digging into his shoulders. We're yours, as you are ours. The distinction mattered, not possession, but belonging, mutual, chosen, real. Sunday morning found them at Blessed Mercy Church for Daniel's baptism. The same pastor who'd warned Naomi about darkness stood at the font, holding her miracle baby while the small congregation sang hymns in Korean and English and Yoruba. Do-hyun had sent a gift, an anonymous donation to the church large enough to expand the orphanage wing. No note, no acknowledgement, just money divorced from its blood-stained origins. Ji-hwan had stared at the notification for a long time before showing Naomi. He's trying, she'd said simply. Trying doesn't erase decades of damage. No, but it's a beginning. Now, watching Pastor Kim pour water over Daniel's forehead while speaking blessings in 3 languages, Naomi reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them here, from infertile missionary to mother, from naive church volunteer to the woman who'd brought a Mafia family to its knees, from victim of a cruel bet to the wife of a man whose obsession had transformed into devotion. Their love had begun with deception, survived betrayal, endured criminal persecution and near death. It wasn't perfect. Ji-hwan's possessiveness would always be part of him, would always require navigation and boundaries and occasional arguments about healthy versus unhealthy attachment. But it was real, it was chosen, and it was theirs. After the ceremony, Ji-hwan held his baptized son while Naomi's church family surrounded them with blessings and casseroles and unsolicited parenting advice. The former Mafia heir, stripped of his empire, looked more content than he'd ever been in his penthouse, overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. "You're mine forever now," he whispered to Daniel, then looked at Naomi with those dark, intense eyes that still made her breath catch. "Both of you, my family, my purpose, my redemption." Naomi leaned into her husband's side, one hand on their son's tiny head, surrounded by community and faith and the messy, complicated, beautiful reality they'd built from ashes. "Forever and always," she whispered back. "We're yours, as you are ours." And in that humble church in Seoul's immigrant district, surrounded by broken people choosing grace, the church girl and the redeemed Mafia boss claimed their hard-won, happy ending. Thank you for reading this dark, romance journey of obsession, redemption, and impossible love. If this story moved you, consider sharing it with others who love intense, morally complex romance with real stakes and transformative character arcs. What would you risk for love? What darkness would you walk through to reach light?